We're about a month into the new season, so even though there's obviously still so much basketball left to be played, it is a good checkpoint to see how things are shaking out and draw some conclusions from it. A lot can still change between now and the end of the season, and for a few teams they desperately need that to be the case, as their years have not gotten off to the start that they were hoping and planning for. This brings us to today's video, where we'll be going through the 4 most disappointing teams in the NBA thus far, and we'll be determining whether it's time to hit the panic button on them or if these early struggles can easily be fixed to get themselves back on track. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first disappointing team up is the Philadelphia 76ers, and for them, it is absolutely time to panic. The 76ers were one of the most active teams in the entire league this offseason, retooling over half of their roster through the abundance of cap space that they had freed up. They signed Paul George as one of the biggest splashes of the period. They also brought in Caleb Martin, Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, and Gershon Yabusele, and yet they're still sitting in dead last in the standings with a 2-12 record. Everything that possibly could have gone wrong so far has gone wrong, and it's incredibly difficult for me to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Joel Embiid's knee injury from last season is still lingering, so he looks like a shell of his former self out on the floor, and despite entering the season fully planning to prioritize getting that knee back to full strength by taking it easy, he's now at a point where he has to rush back onto the court to try to salvage the team's season, which will only end up straining that knee further. Paul George is dealing with knee issues of his own after straining it in preseason and then re-injuring it in their game against the Grizzlies, and when he's been on the court, George has also just looked pretty washed, averaging just 15 points on pretty horrific shooting efficiency. Even Tyrese Maxey has missed an extended stretch due to injury, so their injury luck is all-time levels of unfortunate. The team as a whole look undisciplined. They're the second worst three-point shooting team in the NBA right now. They have far and away the worst ranked overall offense in the NBA right now, and all of their main role players are pretty deeply flawed in some capacity. Guys like Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, and Reggie Jackson are on the verge of retirement. Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre have some pretty bad decision-making and shot selection issues. Andre Drummond's touch around the basket and defensive awareness are a pretty big negative, and all in all, rookie Jared McCain has literally been the only consistent positive for the group. The team was built in a way where they needed Joel Embiid to be at the top of his game at an MVP level for the rest of the pieces to fit together, and with the current status of his knee, that's not happening anytime soon, and everything else has proven to be too worrisome to buy into, unfortunately. The next disappointing team up is the Milwaukee Bucks, and for them, I do not think it's quite time to hit the panic button yet. The Bucks, like the 76ers, got off to a pretty disastrous start to the season, winning just 2 of their first 10 games, digging themselves an early hole to get out of. The Bucks have been one of the best teams in the East for years now, but this year something feels off about them. There has been a lot of tinkering with their lineups and rotations. They've had way too many mental lapses as a group. Inconsistency is prevalent throughout their rotation, and it's just not the way we're used to seeing a Bucks team operate. I will say that this was foreshadowed a bit last season when the team had a losing record under head coach Doc Rivers after he took over, and coaching could absolutely be one of their biggest issues right now. But the reason why I still wouldn't hit the panic button on them is because there is at least a realistic path to getting back on track. Giannis Antetokounmpo is legitimately playing the best basketball of his career right now, leading the NBA in scoring, putting up 32 points per game, while also shooting 61% from the field. He's hauling in 12 rebounds and dishing out 6 assists per game on top of that, and you can tell he has a sense of urgency that, as of late, is rubbing off on those around him, as the team has won 4 of their last 5 games to start getting on the right track. Additionally, they still have the return of Chris Middleton to look forward to, and even though Middleton is probably not going to return to the all-star caliber player he once was, he's still a very important connector in their lineup that gives them another threat that defenses have to plan plan for. With how weak the Eastern Conference looks right now, they should absolutely still be able to finish as a top seed in the conference, even with how slow of a start they've gotten off to. The next disappointing team up is the New Orleans Pelicans, and yes, it is time to hit the panic button for them too. The Pelicans have been trying to plug the right puzzle pieces in for a while now, but they seem to continually come up with square pegs for a round hole. They drafted Zion Williamson over 5 years ago, hoping he could be their superstar franchise pillar to lead the new era of Pelicans basketball, but we're now getting to the point where they're going to have to come to terms with the reality of the situation. Zion has a lot of talent, is still an all-star caliber player at his best, and can dominate the paint, but he's not going to hit that top tier of player, and his health issues have proven to be too severe to rely upon as a franchise cornerstone. Then outside of Zion Williamson, they have Brandon Ingram, currently on the last year of his current contract, unlikely to be given an extension, so they need to figure out what to do with him before the trade deadline. DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum have barely played so far due to injury, and their upside at full strength just doesn't seem that inspiring. The Western Conference is absolutely brutal this season, with 11 teams currently being above 500 record-wise, so starting the year 4-12 like the Pelicans have done so far this year is a pretty big hole to dig themselves out of. Their center rotation is severely lacking in talent and experience, they're going to need time to gel when they do eventually all get healthy, and by the time all of that happens, it will likely be too late. And finally, the last disappointing team we'll be going over today is the Indiana Pacers, and I don't believe it's time to hit the panic button on them yet either. The Pacers made an improbable run to the Eastern Conference Finals last season, so this year the goal was obviously to build on that momentum and continue to progress forward. That has not happened yet, as the Pacers currently have a record of 6-9, sitting right next to the Milwaukee Bucks in the standings, who we discussed earlier. It's easy to say that the Pacers' run to the conference finals came as a result of a ton of luck, as they faced an incredibly banged up Bucks team in the first round, and then Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby were pretty banged up for the Knicks in their second round series, so they were never a real contender to begin with, but they were still a strong, worthy playoff team at least, and they don't even look like that right now. The reason why I still don't believe it's time to panic with them though, is because history has shown that they are clearly much better on the offensive end than what they've been able to show, and their leader Tyrese Halliburton literally could not be playing worse to start the season, so the only direction for him to go is up from here. Halliburton is putting up just 15 points and 8 assists per game after leading the NBA in assists last year while scoring over 20 a night, and he's also shooting a miserable 37% from the field and 28% from 3, despite historically being one of the most efficient guards in the league who shoots a career 40% from 3, so I fully expect him to improve in that regard over time too. His struggles are obviously hindering their overall offensive output, which as a team has them ranked 16th in the league on that end, after being the number 2 ranked offense last year, so again, those are areas that should definitely be improved upon, and will get them at least back in the playoff picture. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these teams moving forward. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.